Businessman Randy Farrell was indicted by a federal grand jury on a number of counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 23 counts in all. And this investigation into Farrell and his building inspection company, IECI, has been closely tied to Mayor LaToya Cantrell. There are some implications in this indictment that have higher up consequences and higher up officials involved. So we want to get over to David Hammer, investigative reporter David Hammer. He's been covering this extensively over the last few months. Now, David, we've been waiting for this indictment to be handed up. It's here. What do we know right now?
Yeah, Katie, I have the indictment here. We just got it moments ago, and it actually tracks exactly what we've been reporting for most of this year about payments made by Randy Farrell to Mayor LaToya Cantrell. It does not name LaToya Cantrell by name. It calls her Public Official 1, but it is very clear that it's referring to her. And as we previously reported, it says that Randy Farrell purchased tickets, $6,000 worth of tickets to the 2019 NFC Championship game for the mayor and others, then continued to want her to get rid of a city official, Jennifer Cecil, who was investigating him for alleged fraud inside the Safety and Permits Office. Randy Farrell, again, he owns the largest inspection company, building inspection company in the city, IECI, and he was using that position to allegedly get permits to do both electrical work and then inspect that work on the back end. And when he was caught doing that allegedly by Jennifer Cecil, he wanted her fired. So this lays out in extensive detail about how he started buying things of value for the mayor. It led to a meeting on August 14th, 2019 at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse downtown, where he again asked her to get rid of Jennifer Cecil. There was a meeting a few days later where people inside the Safety and Permits Department aligned with Randy Farrell were asking the mayor to get rid of Jennifer Cecil, and a few days later she did so. And what the indictment says, in 25 counts of honest services and wire fraud, that Farrell continued his scheme, alleged scheme, of getting falsified permits to get paid for electrical work. He would arrange with a licensed electrician, which he did not have a proper license in the city of New Orleans. He would work with someone who was properly licensed, exchange money, get paid, and then inspect that work on the back end and say it was okay, up to code, safe, good to go. And that went on and on for years, up until, I believe, until 2023. I'll have to go through this even further. But he was convicted of tax fraud in 2021 separately. And so this allegation says that he was continuing this alleged scheme while he was under probation on separate charges, which would potentially be a violation of that probation. So a lot of implications here, but the big headline here, Katie, is that Mayor LaToya Cantrell and other top city officials are implicated in this exchange of money and in this alleged scheme.
Yeah, David, this is something that we've been trying to flush out for several months now. Now we see it written on paper, the allegations. Obviously, the mayor has not been accused or charged with any crimes at this point, but Randy Farrell, this businessman, it spells out in this indictment, may have gone through a go-between. Now, we've reported on Mayor Cantrell's close relationship with businessman Fouad Zitan. And can you talk about their relationship and how your sources have said that might be related to this indictment?
Yes, Fouad Zitan is not named in the indictment, but he is referenced in the indictment as Businessman 1. And there are extensive text messages back and forth between Randy Farrell and Businessman 1, who we know to be Fouad Zitan, basically where Randy Farrell is complaining to Fouad Zitan that the mayor still hasn't gotten rid of Jennifer Cecil. This is after the NFC Championship game, after he had arranged for these tickets to be purchased for the mayor and a whole group of people. And that led to more text messages, eventually the purchase of a cell phone for the mayor where he's directly communicating with Fouad Zitan. And in one of the messages, he says, the expletive is gone, referring to the person he wanted Mayor Cantrell to fire.
Yeah. Now, David, something else that's interesting in here, and maybe you can shed some light on this and give us some insight here. In the indictment, it mentions that from on or about July 31st, 2020 through at least March 10th of 2021, Farrell directly and indirectly provided and attempted to provide things of value to Senior Advisor 1. Do we have any inkling of who Senior Advisor 1 might be?
I don't know who Senior Advisor 1 is at this moment. We have some ideas, but I don't want to go that far until I have it confirmed.
Absolutely.
I can say that he was, I can say that this goes into great detail about the various electricians that Randy Farrell teamed up with, allegedly, to do this whole scheme. And some of them got directly involved. There's somebody that we know from documents that we received is an electrician named Chet Pearson, who is identified in here as licensed electrician 1, who then tried to continue to put pressure on with a letter saying that my friend and associate had the fortitude to expose the significant professional shortcomings of an employee in the city in a meeting with public official 1, referring to Mayor Cantrell. So we have, it goes into how then Randy Farrell used different means once he was caught using checks to pay for these falsified permits, allegedly falsified permits. He then switched to using money orders. And then when he was caught doing that, or potentially caught doing that, he switched to using a direct sign-up system, payment system through a web portal at the city of New Orleans called the one-stop process. So those are the things that we're still fleshing out, Katie. Those are the things where we need to check with sources and make sure that we identify the proper people. But clearly there were multiple people at high levels in city government who were part of this alleged scheme to protect Randy Farrell, allow him to continue making millions of dollars a year doing this work where he was not allowed to do it, and then have the ability to inspect and approve that work on the back end. And the implication is that he wouldn't have called out anything wrong with his own work and would allow potentially dangerous work to go forward, electrical work that can cause, obviously, hidden dangers, as you and I have reported over the years.
Yes, absolutely. Now, this indictment does not include any type of bribery count, but bribery does play a role here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, honest services fraud is almost related to bribery in the federal criminal code. It doesn't involve a direct quid pro quo. In other words, they don't have to establish that Mayor Cantrell received things of value in exchange for doing something for Randy Farrell. What they're trying to establish is that these public officials engaged in fraud, defrauding the city of New Orleans and the taxpayers and the residents of honest services. That has been challenged. That ability to pursue charges on that charge has been challenged to the U.S. Supreme Court and has been severely restricted by the U.S. Supreme Court. So it'll be interesting to see how they proceed on that versus a bribery charge, which, as we just discussed, involves saying this person did this directly in exchange for something of value.
Yeah, you know, when I mentioned senior advisor that is mentioned in here, it sure does sound a lot like things that, you know, the rest of the indictment spells out happened with Mayor Cantrell. So it seems like they're trying to establish a pattern is what I'm getting at here. Can you talk about, you talked about the electricians that are mentioned here. We, as you mentioned, have heard from sources that businessman 1 is in fact Fouad Zitan. What does this mean for charges that we might see coming for other people? Any idea at this point?
Well, there are a whole group of contractors who were affiliated with these various people. One of the people who could be implicated here, who was a city employee, is Larry Chan. Larry Chan was the chief building official for the city of New Orleans back in 2019, 2020. He was fired under investigation after all of this started coming out. And he was the one, and we have him on tape, and we've played this recording in our reports previously of Larry Chan talking directly to the mayor about getting rid of Jennifer Cecil because she was being a watchdog. She was making sure that the process was being followed properly and was accusing him and Randy Farrell and others of wrongdoing. And that's when he met directly with Mayor Cantrell in August 2019 and said, essentially, you've got to get rid of her. And we have Mayor Cantrell on tape that exclusively reported on WWL Louisiana saying, what would happen if I got rid of Jennifer Cecil, if I were to replace her? And that's exactly what happened. So there are implications for everybody involved, the electricians who participated in this payment scheme, alleged payment scheme, as well as these various people who worked in City Hall who essentially allegedly greased the skids essentially for Randy Farrell to continue this for years and years.
Now, David, do we think this is an ongoing investigation? Do we think that this is done at this point?
No, this is absolutely an ongoing investigation. We thought that there was going to be something like this coming down a few months ago tied to August 2019, 5 years. There was a deadline of 5 years to bring charges related to specific acts that we reported about in August 2019. This does make these allegations. This indictment makes those allegations about payments to the mayor and then an action to get rid of this person who is investigating Randy Farrell. The alleged ongoing conspiracy now can continue on into 2021, even 2022. That gives the government more time to bring charges related to that. It's the last act of the conspiracy that has to happen within 5 years. And so if they determine that the mayor or any other public official was involved in helping Randy Farrell along through those continuing years into 2022, 2023, then they have more time to bring those charges.
You know, this is significant, David, as well, because IECI was doing more inspections in the city than the city's own inspectors at one point. So this is also a hit to that Safety and Permits Office, which, you know, as you've been doing some great reporting on, they have seen a number of people indicted, investigated, and this is just the latest, black eye for that department.
That's a great point, Katie, because I actually interviewed Ed Michel, the Inspector General of the City of New Orleans, yesterday, and I asked him about the Randy Farrell situation that we've been reporting on extensively, not knowing for sure that this indictment was going to come down today. And he said, essentially, that's not going to be able to continue, that things are changing. We're embedding Inspector General investigators inside the Safety and Permits Office to make sure this type of thing can't continue. And he said, I think you'll see that kind of thing stopping. So that means potentially with this indictment, which includes IECI is indicted, the company, Randy Farrell's company, is indicted along with Randy Farrell individually. You can expect that the city will not allow IECI to continue doing millions of dollars in inspection work in the city. Like you said, that means they cannot, that contractors cannot rely on IECI to do private inspections for them that can be presented to the city and taken as if a city inspector is doing it. So that means more work has to be done directly by city inspectors or potentially other companies that do private inspection work. We'll see how that all shakes out, but I would expect that the city of New Orleans will move quickly to make sure that IECI, not just Randy Farrell, who's already banned from doing inspections himself, but that the company IECI, now that it's been indicted, will be prevented from doing those inspections. And like you said, that will have a big impact on how the city can perform inspections and approve construction work going forward.
I mean, that's the real kicker here, is that what we're talking about is the safety and security of building and construction in the city of New Orleans, and frankly, in the metro area as well. I mean, IECI has a huge reach in all the different municipalities in areas that are probably watching this broadcast right now. You know, we know just from our investigative reporting over time that they have a huge share of inspections that they were doing in Kenner, in Jefferson Parish, over in St. Tammany Parish, they were doing some work. So this company has really had a leg hold on you know, building inspections and getting those moved through these different municipalities. So that's going to leave a significant vacuum if other municipalities follow suit and remove IECI from its ability to do these inspections. Now, David, something else that people may not know at home is that many of these inspectors who work for IECI are actually building officials and building inspectors in different municipalities. So they all sort of borrow the different inspectors to come work for IECI and then go do inspections in different jurisdictions. So I would think that this is going to have you know, implications beyond the fact that there are sort of serious accusations in here for high up officials in the city of New Orleans. It also is going to affect our building construction landscape.
Absolutely, Katie. I mean, you did extensive investigation on James Muhammad, who worked for IECI and was accused of very similar things in terms of falsifying inspections and then approving his own work on the back end in a previous federal indictment and conviction. Larry Chan, who I mentioned earlier, who was working as the chief building official for the city of New Orleans, he went to work for Randy Farrell. He actually holds the qualifying license for Randy Farrell's electrical company. So the ties here, Brian Meadis was another one who was convicted of taking bribes working for the city of New Orleans, who also worked for IECI. There is a entity under the state fire marshal called the Louisiana State Unified Construction Code Council that gives licenses to inspectors. They have not been willing to withhold or pull the licenses for the inspectors who've been implicated in these previous cases. Now there's an effort, I know, from the state to try to get them to do that and restrict those inspectors from working in the future. It could have a massive impact on the number of inspectors available to allow construction projects to move forward. That has an impact on the real estate industry, on the building industry. It could have major implications here beyond just the political corruption that's alleged here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to mention also that Randy Farrell has also been charged with crimes related to his inspection company and construction in other parishes as well.
That's right. Randy Farrell and Larry Chan were arrested, I believe it was in 2022, charged with falsifying a permit on a house and falsifying inspection reports on a house in Jefferson Parish. That case is still pending in Jefferson Parish Criminal Court. And like you said, they, as a third-party inspection firm, work across our area in multiple parishes, essentially standing in for the parish inspectors. So if they are removed from doing that work, it's going to mean a lot more work for already taxed code enforcement and safety and permits offices across our region.
And not to go back too far, but a lot of this started after Hurricane Katrina because there was such a shortage and there was so much construction going on that they really needed private companies to step in and private inspectors to step in to supplement the forces of these municipalities. There just weren't enough of them, and they wanted to make sure that the construction work that was going on was in fact secure and safe. And that's at the heart of this at the end of the day is our construction work secure and safe and quality for people out there who are having to rely on these inspectors to sign off. A lot of times the homeowners don't even know who's inspecting their work. So it is a situation. That's why we called that series Hidden Dangers, because a lot of people, homeowners, don't even know that these people are involved in their construction projects. But going back to the implications for political corruption here, David, you know, this is it goes all the way to the top.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, we had the indictment of Jeffrey Vappy that also named LaToya Cantrell without using her name, but referenced the mayor. This is much more directly implicating her because it's talking about her receiving things of value allegedly from Randy Farrell and then allegedly doing things to help Randy Farrell continue this fraudulent scheme, alleged fraudulent scheme. So it's not an indictment of the mayor. She's not been indicted, she's not been charged with anything, but she is directly referenced as a part of this alleged conspiracy.
Interestingly, it says in the indictment that the iPhone that Farrell allegedly bought for the mayor was later returned. So I think that's interesting that they included that little detail in this indictment. I don't know if that means anything in terms of criminal charges or if that could affect the criminal charges, but interesting for sure.
Well, we know that paying things back or returning things does not necessarily absolve you if you've already broken the law to obtain it, but it does tell you something about, the concern that they had about this and about the implications here, and it is included in the indictment. So whether it was returned or not is irrelevant to the charges here. It says that the payment or the gift was made with the expectation that, or as a thank you for getting rid of Jennifer Cecil and clearing the way for Randy Farrell to allegedly continue this conspiracy.
David, I want to bring in our fellow investigative reporter on our investigative team, Mike Pearlstein. He's here in the studio with me just to talk about this with you as well, David. And the three of us kind of peel back the layers of this pretty extensive indictment today. Mike, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, just from the start, this is an indictment against Randy Farrell and his company, IECI. But this 25-count indictment is a sweeping implication of public official number one, that would be Mayor LaToya Cantrell, and many others who we need to kind of sort out. There are a lot of threads in this document. Public official two. We know that one of the public officials is Jennifer Cecil, who David mentioned, got fired allegedly at the request of not just Randy Farrell, but Fuad Zetan, who is also not in here by name, but implicated. And we have a chief of staff implicated. And what is quite interesting, if you look at the legal, strategy being used here, if you look at count 22, which is honest services fraud, is a very broad umbrella for which you can fold in any manner of bribery, conspiracy, and in fact, under count 22, it comes right off the bat listing the conspiracy, which, as we know, that involves two or more officials engaged in a criminal act. And I will just read, while the indictment itself does not explicitly have a charge of bribery, it says that the conspiracy includes, and this is once again under honest services fraud, one of the broadest possible federal charges. It says soliciting and accepting bribes and kickbacks to apply for and receive permits in the name of licensed electricians. It goes on to say offering and paying bribes and kickbacks to public officials with the intent to influence those public officials in the performance of official acts. So this is a wide net. The federal government clearly has done their homework. We see text message exchanges that are extremely incriminating. Randy Farrell mentioned by name explicitly, but businessman one also named in these text message exchanges. I'll just read. The tenor of this is pretty explosive. We have a text exchange that begins in January of 2019, which seems to be sort of the starting point of some alleged effort to remove Jennifer Cecil. And we have businessman one, presumably Zetan, texting, "I'm working on making you the king of the city of New Orleans, and I'll be the assistant king." Farrell replied, I'm quoting from the indictment, Farrell replied, "Just get public official one to get her out, and we will be kings of safety and permits." Farrell continued, "The woman is still up there." So we know that Jennifer Cecil was not let go for many months after this. We then see an unfolding, as David Hammer has documented in multiple stories, a lunch at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in which there was, I guess, some impatience that this firing had not occurred yet. So they are painting a pretty damning portrait, and I think the big takeaway right here is whoever is implicated here, we would imagine that they have already obtained criminal defense legal counsel, or they are scrambling now to, as they say, lawyer up.
And one thing that we did learn from the indictment of Jeffrey Vappy, who of course is Mayor LaToya Cantrell's bodyguard, the feds, implying that she is having a romantic relationship with him, something that she's denied. But we did know that they had all of their phone records, their text messages. So clearly, they have a lot of places that they've been looking. And it directly relates to her. So it makes you wonder how much of this is targeted at Randy Farrell and how much this indictment will end up being targeted at someone else.
And look, one thing you always have to consider when these kind of indictments come down with implications of other officials is what is in this indictment aimed at other officials to send sort of a warning signal that we have your text messages. We know your involvement in this alleged conspiracy. And what we don't know, and this is very early in the actual process with this indictment coming down, but we know it's been in the works for some time. And we've reported on it pretty extensively. We do have to ask ourselves, are any of the officials in here already cooperating with the federal government? The level of detail here is, it's pretty explicit. It's sort of a blow by blow. I do think that as all federal indictments, the language, the examples that they're using, these text messages, for example, we will be kings of safety and permits, very intentionally chosen by prosecutors, not just to lay out their case, but to send a signal to the others who are not yet charged and indicted. And so far, right now, it's just Randy Farrell and his company, IECI.
Yes, I mean, we know just from, David Hammer's reporting that Fouad Zitan is very likely going to be named as a player in this at some point. David, you want to join us again and just give us some final thoughts now on, this really sweeping indictment. I mean, 25 counts is significant, and these are pretty wide-ranging, and as Mike just said, it seems the feds are really casting a wide net here.
Absolutely, and I'll just say Mike really hits it on the head when he talks about the details from these text messages. We knew that they got Fouad Zitan's phone because he was indicted in a separate scheme involving art insurance fraud, and they got that, and they got text from the mayor, and they got information from Randy Farrell's computer, and the specifics in these texts saying things like after they got rid of Jennifer Cecil, Fouad Zitan texting Mayor Cantrell, "You are a person of your word. Thank you so much for handling safety and permits problem." So they have the money. They have the direct messages acknowledging that something was done for them. And so it's extremely detailed, and then they can use that to go to the other people involved and put a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, I mean, we know just from history and from seeing how they operate, that is something that tends to happen a lot in cases like this, right? That federal prosecutors will use people connected to those they are targeting in order to secure indictments and get more information, build their case.
Exactly, and we knew that they were building toward this for a long time, but to have this much detail and to have this much tracked in terms of the money and in terms of the permits gives them a position of strength to go to each individual person and say, hey, you got to give us more information if you don't want to be charged too.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for breaking this news with us. And thank you, Mike, for being here as well. And we're going to continue to cover this throughout the afternoon. We'll have the very latest on the WWL Louisiana News at 5 and 6 today. But now we want to return you to your regular programming.
This has been breaking news from WWL Louisiana.